Determine the function that defines the following parabola. We are looking for the equation that will give us exactly this parabola when we go to graph it or stick it into our calculator. So unlike the example in the previous lesson that wanted us to just find an equation with those x-intercepts, this one wants a specific equation. So we will have a little bit more that we need to do. As we go to look at it, we need our x-intercepts. So there's our two x-intercepts. So we have an x-intercept is equal to -1 and 4. Now recall we needed our factors. So for our factors, we took the x-intercepts and we rewrote them so that we would have it equal to 0. So for the first one, we're going to add 1 to both sides. X plus 1 is equal to 0. And on this one, we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. So when I do that, I get x minus 4 is equal to 0. So there are my two factors. In our previous one, we would have gone y equals, put in our two factors, and said there's an equation. That's an equation with those x-intercepts, but we want to ensure that our equation will go through these. So we're going to put an a here, which affects how wide or how narrow the graph goes or how tall the graph goes. And as we go to do that, we now need to solve for a. As we go to solve for a, we are going to need a point off the graph. So we're going to solve for a using a point off the graph. Now, one of the nicest points, easiest points to read is our y-intercept. So I'm going to use our y-intercept, and that's going to be 0, 12, where this is x, this is y. We have two examples like this. This one I am going to use the y-intercept. The next one I'm not going to use the y-intercept, just so that you see it doesn't always have to be the y-intercept that we use. From here, we're going to plug these into our equation, and we are going to solve for a. So we get 12 equals a bracket 0 plus 1, and then bracket 0 minus 4. So that's what we're looking at solving. When we go to do that, we have 12 is equal to a times 1 times -4. 1 times -4 is -4, but we don't want -4a, we want a. So we need to move that -4 to the other side. We are multiplying, so we are going to divide both sides by -4. And when we do that, we get -3 is equal to a. Now we wanted the equation, so as I go to look for this equation, what ends up happening is that this -3 is going to go way up here and go in for that a. So we're going to take this equation, rewrite it, but instead of writing in this a, we're going to write in the -3 we just found. So we have y equals -3, x plus 1, x minus 4. And there's the equation that if we put it into our calculator and graph, we will get the same picture as the one they gave us. For this equation, it says, note that if there's only one x-intercept, there are two roots that are exactly the same. Well, let's start off the same way we have our previous example. So if we look at it, we get an x-intercept. is right here, which happens to be x equals -1. And if we go to look for our factor, we have x is equal to -1. Move the -1 to the other side. We're going to add 1 to both sides. I get x plus 1 equals 0. From here, we are now needing to write our equation. So we have y equals a. Now, last one said we needed 2 brackets. And in order to get a parabola, you need to have an x squared, which does mean we need 2 sets of brackets. However, there is a catch, because we only have one value here. So I could put this into the first bracket, but now the question is, what do I put in the second? Okay, so 1 x-intercept means that this guy here and this guy here are the same. So when we have our vertex, the top of our graph, or our bottom of our graph, but our vertex right on the x-axis, we are going to end up with both factors being exactly the same. So I'm going to put x plus 1 in for my other one. Now we're going to go and solve for a. I did say I was going to use something other than our y-intercept. So here's our y-intercept. We also have, so when you go to look at it, you're looking for any place where it crosses the grid nicely. So there's a point there and a point there. So at the corner of the grid squares, where it's easy for us, we don't have to do any estimating, we could also use this point here, and there's the y-intercept, that point there. So we have 4 options on this one as to which one we're going to use. I did say that I was going to pick not the y-intercept, but you could. So we're going to use a point, and out of this use a point, this is a case of picking a point off the graph. For me, I'm going to pick this one here. So this point here is +1 for x and -8 for y. So I'm going to use 1, -8 to solve for a. Remember, there's your x, and there's your y. So we're going to substitute those into our equation. So we have -8 is equal to a times 1 plus 1. This one came from the x value. This one was already there. 1 plus 1. Again, this came from the x of our point. This was already there. And now we're solving. This comes out to 2. That comes out to 2. And so, -8 is equal to a. 2 times 2 is 4. But we want a, not 4a. So to get a by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 4. And when we go to do that, we get an a value of -2. So remember, this a value, now that we know what it is, we're going to take it. It's going to go back into our equation right there. So we're looking at y is equal to -2, bracket x plus 1, bracket x plus 1. And there is the equation for the graph on the left.